The Las Vegas Raiders superstar pass rusher Maxx Crosby was recently on his podcast in which he was asked about some of the guys that have stood out to him during OTAs. And Maxx Crosby went ahead and talked about two guys specifically that have stood out to him at OTAs. Both guys are rookies. Both guys are some of the younger guys that I'm personally really excited to watch. Maxx Crosby gives a huge shout out to cornerback Darien Porter and wide receiver Dante Thornton Jr. I'm going to let you guys listen to this video, and then we'll talk about this on the other side. Do know it is about 4 minutes long, so it is a little bit longer. If you guys have already seen it, feel free to skip ahead about 4 minutes. Check out the video. We'll talk about it on the other side.
But these two dudes have stood out to me for sure. So on defense, Darien Porter, big cornerback. You know, I will say this kid, like, he's been a receiver his whole life. That's the first thing I'm like, okay, this kid's played receiver. Like, is he even, you know, like how can you even make that transition? But you've seen it happen before. Yeah, you got ball skills, and also you've seen guys like Richard Sherman. It makes like too much sense in Pete's pedigree to bring in a guy like him. So the second we drafted him, like, I wanted to know more about him, see what he's about, see what kind of person he is. I immediately, like, when he got drafted and got here, like, I went up to him, you know, and we've had a lot of good conversation. And this dude is he's a freak of nature, bro. Like, looking at him on the field, like, he looks like a starting X receiver. Like, he's out these 6'4", I think 6'3", 6'4", rangy and running a 4.3. He runs like a gazelle out there, and he's got ball skills, which is crazy, you know, especially at cornerback. You don't see it. You know, it's typically not at that level. So, yeah, he's adapted really fast. He's been like he's super humble, super quiet kid, but he's showing up to work every day and getting better, and he's getting put in positions to go and compete against the best guys on our team. And I think he's responded really well. So yeah, big shout out to Darien Porter on the defensive end. He's a stud. And also I got to shout out my guys too. You know, I don't want to be biased and just, you know, name D lineman the whole time. I know this is the rush, but we got some young dudes that we brought in on that D line that are getting after it. I mean, my guy Tonka and Big JJ, they're moving. Even the guys, you know, the undrafted guys too, they're getting after it as well. So
are they fitting well in the room too?
Yeah, they fit in well. It's been a seamless transition. So, but yeah, I don't want to take away from Darien's moment. So Darien Porter on the defense for sure. And then on offense, I know that the easy one, everyone always gonna, you know, you talk about Ashton, you talk about Jack, both of them look like ballers. Have been awesome so far. But Dante Thornton, the dude we drafted from Tennessee, the big receiver, 6'4", another freak, 6'4", I think he might be 6'5", runs a 4.3. He reminds me of Martavis Bryant. Like, he even looks like him. He's tall, skinny, wears number 10. He's got the grills in. He's got the dreads. Like, the way he runs, the way he catches the ball, like, he reminds me of Martavis. And it's crazy because a kid like that who's, he had success in college, but hasn't hit his full potential yet. Seeing him on the field and realizing what he can be is, you know, from a player perspective, like, holy shit, like, this dude could be something serious. But he's got a long way to go. And that's the beautiful part about it. And for me, like, being a leader and being on the other side of the ball, I always try to, you know, touch as many, you know, people on the field and many guys in the locker room that I can, you know, get close with and help out. And a kid like that who's super humble, just young, trying to figure it out with all the potential in the world. Those are the type of guys that I try to, you know, get in their ear early, and definitely try to help them out because everybody's path isn't the same. But a kid like him, like, you could see it, like, he really wants it. He needs a little bit of guidance, but, he's a stud. He's an absolute freak. You watch him out on the field and you're like, holy f-. He doesn't look like everybody else. He doesn't look like everybody else. So yeah, super excited about him. He's looked great though. He's been making plays and flying around, and yeah, you got to give a big shout out to Dante Thornton. He's looked really good so far, no doubt.
So there you guys have it, right? Maxx Crosby kind of gets into depth with some of what he's seen with Darien Porter. One of the things Max says is right away when the Raiders drafted this guy, from the second we drafted this guy, right? I wanted to know more about this guy. He's a freak of nature. He's 6'4", running a 4.3 40-yard dash. Darien Porter's one of those guys that Max looked at and just kind of physically impressed with this guy. Right? He's a former wide receiver turned to corner. Kind of reminds you of like that Richard Sherman and how Pete Carroll kind of converted him to a cornerback as well. Maxx Crosby talks really, really positive about Darien Porter. And one of the interesting things Max even threw in there, which we already knew this, right? This was something someone had told me, and I talked about it already, like maybe at some point last week, which was Darien Porter is taking first team snaps for the Raiders at the cornerback position. Max says the following. He's saying that, hey, Darien Porter is getting into positions to go compete versus the best players on our team. Big shout out to Darien Porter, right? But he's throwing it in there. That Darien Porter is kind of being thrown in there, right? It makes sense why the Raiders are putting Darien Porter in this position where he's being thrown to go up against some of the best players on our team. Why the Raiders want this guy to succeed, and the way to do that is to go up against those best players. You know, when you get an undrafted free agent, right? Let's say it's a guy like Mello Dotson for the Raiders, right? So UDFA, this guy right now is at the bottom of the depth chart. This guy's not going out there and taking first team snaps, right? A guy like Dotson is going to come in there. That's the corner out of Kansas. He's going to come in there and he's going to line up and go up against guys like Kyle Phillips or Alex Bachman, right? He's going to go up against some of these guys that are lower on the depth chart, right? That's not happening with Darien Porter. Darien Porter is getting out there and going up against Jack Besh and Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, right? That's what the Raiders are putting this guy in position for, and it fires me up so much because everything I'm hearing about Porter has been really, really, really impressive, right? Like, this guy's impressive. And again, the thing that we have to realize is Darien Porter is still very, very raw, right? He only played like 700 snaps in college. And again, he's a former wide receiver, as Maxx Crosby said, which does translate to the ball skills aspect of things, right? Wide receivers have to be able to find the football and make those adjustments in the middle of the air and essentially get the ball. But with Darien Porter kind of being on the rawer side and the fact that he's already kind of flashing, he's gotten Maxx Crosby's attention, really has me fired up for what's to come this season. Now, I don't have the expectations that Darien Porter is going to be a day one superstar player, Hall of Famer day one. I don't have those expectations. Right, I think Darien Porter will come in and he'll be a second. He'll be on the second team, right? As preseason begins, training camp kind of goes, and even when the regular season comes around, truth be told, I don't expect Darien Porter to be the starter for the Raiders. I think Eric Stokes is probably going to be ahead of him. Lonnie Johnson, depends on where he lines up, may be ahead of him. Ja'Cory Bennett will definitely be ahead of him as well. So I don't fully expect Darien Porter to be the starting cornerback day one. Obviously, I do think he'll develop into it, but I don't have those expectations, right? But I do love the fact that we are hearing from our superstar players that he is one of the guys that's kind of standing out. Now, Maxx Crosby also does throw both Tonka, Hemingway, as well as JJ. He says, I want to give these two guys credit as well because these guys have been looking good as well. Now, obviously, they weren't the one guy, right? Like, neither of those two guys are the one guy. But he does still shout them out. We'll see what those two guys can develop into. I'm not like huge on those guys and the upside of what those two guys have, but we'll see what guys can develop into, right? You can always get better in the NFL. You can always develop by watching other guys. But I do love the fact that Max mentions Darien Porter. This is the guy that I'm probably most excited about. But he also mentions another guy, right? He also mentions another guy. It's going to be Dante Thornton Jr. Maxx Crosby has some interesting words for him, right? So obviously Thornton is 6'5", runs 4'3". He's an absolute freak. And Maxx Crosby's digging it, right? Like, he's saying that you can kind of just see it right away, right? He's saying that he kind of reminds me of Martavius Bryant, which I think that's just a perfect comp for Thornton because, truth be told, there's not a lot of those type of guys in the NFL, right? Bryant, Thornton, being like 6'4", 6'5", being as fast as those two guys, there's just not a lot of guys built like that. When you're 6'4", 6'5", you're going to be on the slower side, right? But Maxx Crosby does say, like, holy shit, like, this dude can be something serious, right? He does mention, obviously, that he has a long way to go in terms of development, right? He does have to get better. He does have to develop, which I agree with Max as well, right? When you watch Dante Thornton's tape, he has to develop and he has to fine-tune his technique a little bit. But the profile that this guy has is unique as hell. And, I just think about the Raiders and kind of what they can become on the offensive side as we go forward. You already have Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers. And we haven't seen Ashton Jeanty play, but I'm pretty sure Ashton Jeanty is going to be comparable to Brock Bowers. Right? Like, that's how good Ashton Jeanty will be for the Raiders. But then that doesn't include some of the other guys that we have, right? We know what Jacoby Myers is, right? He's kind of He's been very consistent, right? What he showed us last year, we're going to get that from him 100%, right? He's just a consistent ass football player. Jack Bech, we don't know what this guy can be, but we know he can be similar to Jacoby, and maybe he could even be better than Jacoby, right? Maybe he becomes like that Cooper Kupp type of player that could just beat double coverage all day. He becomes an elite route runner, right? Because he can still continue to kind of develop that aspect of his game. And then you have Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton, who are very, very, very explosive. But, one of the things with Tucker is he might be a better route runner than Thornton, but Thornton is also a lot taller than Trey Tucker. So Thornton can kind of be that jump ball guy as well for the Raiders down in the end zone. Right? That doesn't include Michael Mayer as well. We'll see what he can kind of develop into. To me, the Raiders have so many good young football players, and based off of like the profile and like the traits that these guys have, the Raiders offense could be very, very, very good. Right? And of course, we have a quarterback in Geno Smith that should be able to kind of put that together. Geno Smith should be able to play at a high level for 2 to 5 years still. And with that, that's probably enough time for these guys to kind of start to hit like the peak, right? Like if Dante Thornton's going to be a good football player within the first 2 to 3 years, you're going to see that, right? Jack Bech, if he's going to be a good football player, you'll see that within the first 2 or 3 years, right? And again, Geno Smith being the quarterback, this offense can be very, very, very explosive for the Raiders. And again, love the fact that Maxx Crosby is giving a shout out to these guys. I am excited to see what the Raiders can do this year. Obviously, we are now at the point where there's not a ton of things that are going to be coming out. We still have OTAs. The Raiders will continue to have these days where they'll have OTAs. They'll have another one here coming up in June, right? They'll have like another 3 or 4 day period where they'll be able to do a little bit more than what they did in June. And then at that point, training camp's right around the corner, right? The Raiders will begin training camp at some point soon. And then from there, you just kind of go forward with the actual season. It's kind of crazy to think because we are closer to the season actually starting than the Super Bowl, right? We're already way past the half point at this point, right? So let me know what you guys think, man. Season will be here soon enough. I'm excited for it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.